Hi everybody, my name is Jacob Shaw, Wellness Coordinator at SSP Wellness in Alton, Illinois. This video is just a disclaimer to make sure before engaging in any sort of new physical activity routine, check in with your doctor to make sure you are cleared for light, moderate, or even vigorous intensity exercise. Always check your surroundings to make sure it's clear of any objects or any other risks, and be safe. Welcome to Volume 2 of Exploring Movements Using a Suspension Trainer. So the movements we're going to be exploring today are the good morning, which is fantastic for activating most of the posterior chain or the muscles across the back of the body. The chest fly, which primarily works pectoralis major, pectoralis minor, but there's a lot of stabilization going on in the entire rotator cuff, teres minor, the rear deltoid, etc. We are also going to go over the rear deltoid fly, which activates the rear deltoid, the rhomboids, a little bit of the lower trapezius muscle, definitely stabilizing a lot in the forearms. We're going to go over tricep extensions, which predominantly obviously are going to work triceps. We're going to go over high torso rotations, which are when we get into rotational movements, we're talking about the abs, the external obliques, the internal obliques, and then we're going to finally do a fallout, which is going to be the main abdominal muscles, or rectus abdominis. So hope you guys are ready. Here we go. So when talking about doing lots of body weight movements or calisthenics, weight utilizing just what you weigh, it's really tricky to get a large, heavy lift or ways to work a lot of the posterior chain, especially the spinal erectors, or muscles back here in your back. So the best movement I've actually been able to come up with is not only the bridge pose, which you've seen in my calisthenics series, but also the other one that we do use is called a good morning. And how to perform a good morning on a suspension strap is a little complicated, but at the same time, it's not overly complex. What we do in the starting position for a good morning is we're going to stand completely reached up like we're pushing something up over our head. And then we are going to slowly step forward until there's just a little bit of tension on the back of the shoulders or the rear deltoids. Then all we're going to do while maintaining this perfect flat position, lifting our toes and hold our hands over our head, is we are going to just fold in half just at the hip. Just at the hip, folding as far forward as we can. And once we reach the full fold, where we are approximately at 90 degrees, we are going to, keeping our arms straight, squeeze our glutes and pull our wrists back behind us and push forward until we are back up at almost perpendicular to the floor. Now it is very important at the beginning of this motion, as I am right now, that we are not standing in completely untension in our shoulders. We need to walk forward to make sure there's a little bit of pressure back there. Just fold in half, squeeze the glutes, pull the wrist back, pull back up. The next movement we're going to explore is going to be the chest fly. So we have seen how to do the chest press, where we're pressing away from our body. Now with a fly, the idea is that we are holding our arms in a very specific position, making sure that none of those major joints are locked out. We're not locking the elbows, we're not completely straight armed, but we're going to have a slight bend in them. And what we're going to do is we're just going to open up our chest, expanding, and then pushing our chest back together. And how that's going to look, we're going to have to create a little more space in the straps for this one, which we're just pushing our little carabiners, drag it out a little bit, make sure they are close to matching. Starting position, to start out, we are almost, once again, almost perpendicular to the earth, just a little bit of a bend forward. That way we feel the pressure in our chest and in our front deltoids, in our triceps. We're going to take that slight bend in our arms. We are going to reach wide, opening our chest up and leaning forward. Our pecs should be just about in line with our wrists. And then we're going to squeeze our chest back together, bringing our arms back in until the straps touch the outside of our deltoids. Open the chest and squeeze and close up. All right, so we've seen the chest fly. Now, what we're gonna go over is a deltoid fly. It's a very similar concept. It's It's going to be that same open position, not locked out in our joints, but instead of leaning forward and doing it, we're actually going to start at the extended point. This time we're going to start virtually perpendicular to the earth because this is a very, very challenging movement. The deltoids, especially the rear deltoid, is not as large as pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. We aren't working with near as strong of muscles here, so we don't need quite the angle and quite the amount of the function of our body weight. So we're at a large, open, wide T. Elbows are slightly bent. Wrists are tight, but they're not reaching and rotating back. They're just locked in one position. And we are just going to simply lean back. Now, what we're going to do is maintaining that bend in our elbows, maintaining that rigidity inside of our wrist, we are just going to pull our body back upright to almost standing straight up. And reach back. And open. All right, so next we're going to explore the tricep extension. We need a different angle for the camera so you guys can see the actual position that you want to put your body in to eliminate as much stress on the joints as possible. So with a tricep extension, we're not moving a large amount of our body. We're moving a singular joint here. We're just going to be focusing on bending or flexing and extending at the elbow to train the triceps. So the position I like to put my body in for this is I like to take about a squat width stance or right at hip width. I want to take a slight bend into my knees. I want to have my elbows about in line with my ears here. And then I'm going to just simply lean forward, bringing my thumbs towards my temples. And then I'm just going to push my wrists back away. The hips, the knees, the shoulders will all stay in one position. We're just flexing and extending at the elbow. All right, time for a little bit more of a complicated motion. This motion we call the high torso rotation. This is going to be a twisting motion that you will feel a lot in the oblique facing away from the suspension trainer. You will also feel it in the pecs and the front deltoid of the shoulder closest to the suspension trainer. So what you'll do is you'll stand back in what feels like a very moderate intensity row angle, or maybe close to 40 degrees, 45 degrees. And then what we're going to do with straight arms, we're going to pivot just a little bit, placing both of our feet flat on the ground towards the side we're going to rotate towards. Then all we're going to do is holding both hands together, squeezing our abs, we're going to pull our body up to almost standing, and then control ourselves back into that row position. With any sort of rotational movement like this, please make sure you do both sides. It would simply be whip pivot, for our last motion today, we're going to go over a motion called a fallout. The fallout is going to be primarily focused on training rectus abdominis, or the large ab muscles that travel from the sternum to the pubic symphysis, or the groin, if you will. So for this one, we're almost like we're starting in that same chest press position, right? But instead of doing that, we're going to hold our body pretty well firm and tight. And all we're going to do is, while bracing our abdomen and bracing our glutes, we are going to slowly reach forward as far as feels comfortable until we get into almost a Superman pose. And then we're going to, while squeezing our abs, push our wrists back down until we're back in that chest position. Whatever angle you put yourself is going to be adding an extreme amount of resistance to your core muscles. A lot of additional shoulder stability can be gained by doing this motion. So now you've seen all the movements on volume 2. Go ahead and give them a try, but if anything does cause any sort of pain or discomfort, remember to suspend them immediately. We're trying to move towards healthier, happier bodies and avoiding injury that does the opposite.